All right, good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep, we
Yes.
can.
Okay, excellent. Welcome everyone to the first ExploreSA the Gawler Challenge webinar. My name's Holly. I'm from Earth. I'm going to MC this webinar as such. And I'd also like to introduce Peter and Christie from the South Australian Government, who are going to help facilitate this and answer some of your questions as well. So I will just give you a quick introduction to how we're going to run the session. Try and keep these as a fairly open Q&A session. I'll run a quick introduction here to kind of talk you guys through the challenge through the website. I'll also then flick to Christie to just give you a quick rundown on SARIC. And then just a quick intro, Christie, nothing just in terms of what other ways to access data, really.
Okay, yep, sure.
And then you'll see, as we're talking, you'll see at the bottom of the screen, there is actually a Q&A button. So if you have any questions, feel free at any time to start popping your questions in there. And then we'll start addressing those once we've kind of got over that intro. So mostly the purpose of this session is to have that kind of open Q&A, allow you guys an opportunity to ask as many questions as you like. So please just pop those questions in that Q&A box. This session will be recorded, and we'll also transcribe the Q&A responses and pop those into our FAQ section on the website. And yeah, we'll be able to share the video of the webinar as well. So anyone that wasn't able to attend will be able to watch that. So Peter and Christie, is there anything you want to say before I jump into it?
Oh, no, just a quick welcome to everybody, and glad to have you all on board. And yeah, look forward to hearing your questions.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely.
Excellent. So I will just share my screen, I think, get that working. And I think we're expecting most of the questions to come up today to likely be around data access, questions around the different data types. So even in the intro, that's probably mostly what we'll talk about. And yes, Aaron, we will go through all the questions that you've put in on the FAQ, and anyone else. We have had quite a few people send through questions in advance. So during this session, we'll run through all those questions as well. Okay, so let's just quickly share. Here we go. So I'm hoping that everyone can see my screen now. So really, I want to just give you an overview of where you can find the information that you need on the website. So you can see here we're under Competitions ExploreSA. Most of you should be familiar with this site now. If you haven't finalize your registration now, if you come to this website, you would see a button here which would say register now, and that's really just a final step to accept the terms and conditions. Now the competition is live, and then you'll be able to, under this edit submission button, create your team and put details into your submission as you go. In terms of other details on the challenge page, you see we've got an overview here where we run through kind of key high-level information and prizes. The challenge page is where we run through the detailed descriptions of the challenge. So what are we actually asking people to do here? What is the background to why we're doing it? Why is this an interesting problem? What are types of mineral deposits that you can find in the Gawler? The types of data available, resources, how you kind of make submissions, and all those kind of extra pieces of information there. And then under the forum, you guys have mostly been on there already, so we kind of have any options to ask additional questions. And after this webinar, if you have any more questions, please pop them in there. And then under the rules section, you can go through all the different prize categories and the descriptions for those, judging criteria and submission guidelines. So I'll pop to the data tab now. This is probably where we're going to get a lot of the questions coming through. So what we've done here really, and again, I'll ask Christie to talk a little bit to SARIC, but we recognise there's a huge amount of data available for this project area that the government have curated and built over many years, and there's a really large number of relevant data sets. So to help get you started, we really wanted to curate that a little bit and showcase some kind of top 10 data sets for the challenge to help get you started. So when you go into this page, that's what you kind of come to first. And that's a combination of geophysics, of drilling and surface sampling data. So I won't talk through those in detail, but if you do have any questions about why did we pick those, what is specific to those data sets, which is important, please let me know. Essentially, it's a combination of the key different data sets which geoscientists use in their in mineral exploration. The geophysics giving you key physical characteristics of the rock, and the drilling and surface sampling and observations, those kind of direct measurements. We do have a huge amount of additional data sets that can be found on SARIG. So I think it's 45, I think it's actually up even more now. If you click through on that link here, you'll go to that catalogue, and it's already filtered of ExploreSA, the Gawler challenge. So you can see there's 47 here. And all of these data sets have been specifically put in here for the challenge. So you can scroll through there. There's a lot of different data sets in there, which is why we started out with those top 10. So if you have any specific questions on those while we're on this webinar, please put those forward. Otherwise, as you go through them, you can pop those questions on the forum. There are a few data sets which are hosted on an AWS instance, mostly due to size. So for those, if you are able to just move that into your own environment rather than downloading, it's probably easier for you because they're fairly large file types. So that's a very, very quick intro to the challenge and to the data. I might just quickly flick to you, Christie, now to just talk about if there's any other ways that people can look at accessing the data, a little bit of an intro to SARIG.
Yeah, sure. Shall I do a bit of a screen?
Yeah, if you'd like to.
Okay, so yeah. Share screen. Can you see the screen, Holly?
No.
No, okay.
Let me see. You should be able to share.
Select a window. Yeah, this one.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, okay, cool. So just for a bit of a basic rundown of what SARIG is. So SARIG is our Department of Energy and Mining's delivery portal for all of our data. This covers industry data and also our own government initiatives. So when I say industry data, that means that we collate. So basically, when an exploration company takes out some ground as an exploration license, they have to annually report all of the data back to us in an annual report and submit all the digital data. So that includes what Holly kind of talked about before, the geophysics, any sampling, drilling, etc. So that all comes into us, and after 5 years for minerals, we release that as open file data or pre-competitive data as well. So that all comes out through SARIG. So when you talk about all that drilling, it's generally industry exploration data. So we deliver quite a few types of data, I suppose, in SARIG. So our big one is our spatial data sets. So we would showcase sometimes where the data is, especially for drilling. It's like, well, yes, there's a spot here, there is data here, but you may have to drill into a database to access more data. So really it's using the map to access definitely different data sets. So for example, these basically, you can explore our themes. So these come across of the projects and products or anything that have come out of the, like the Geological Survey or petroleum, because SARIG does cover the petroleum industry as well. So these are pretty sort of packaged data sets that the survey has worked on. They've collated the data from industry or our own initiatives, and they've put it out as a product. So the GCAS is a prime example of one of our own initiatives where we've, you know, all the data has been collected, and now we put it out as a product. So for example, if you're looking for that data, you can come along and here, these are all the themes. So there's about now 700 data sets, spatial data sets in SARIG. So you can come along and explore the themes, then you come in and you can click one of these. And what it's going to do is push through to our data catalogue, and then you can sort of turn on what you like. So what we've kind of done for the challenge is we've packaged up some of these data sets to make it easier, so you're not having to download one by one. For example, if I was looking, you know, to access, come on SARIG to access, say, this GCAS block, I can turn it on. Active layers is where you can access data. So we've got all of the icons along here that tell you a little bit more about the data. So here's the metadata. If you want to know more about the data set or how it was collected, you can suss out the metadata, or you can download. This download here will give you the TIFF or the ERS. We also have links here to related data. So if you have a little icon that pops up to a data set in SARIG, you can click on this and it will extend down and say, you know what, there is more information or another data package. So if I click on this in SARIG, this will take us to our publications reports database. Also, we have our prepackaged data as well. So here is the actual data package, and then you've also got here some enhanced work that was done, I believe, with the CSIRO. So that's more information that's available. So there's two ways to access data in SARIG. Really another way, so this is probably, you know, a bit by bit way to do it. This is, and again, why we packaged up a lot and put it on AWS when unearthed to get it easy. Another way you could sort of access this data is through our web services. So we also have that available. So our web services, we have a listing up in our main menu. So if I click on our main menu, come down to web services, it will give you a list of all of the group services that we have available. So for example, again, if I'm looking just for the service for GCAS, we have one specifically for it. And it is here. And so here, this is it's actually a WMS, I think it's tiled. You can click on here and then you can put that into any GIS package. If you don't have a GIS package, there's always QGIS that's available. All of these services will work in QGIS, so you can access the data that way as well. I suppose, so that's basically the spatial data sets. I mean, they're there for you to look at and peruse, I suppose, and then access. So again, it's just, if you're looking for a data set, you can find it in the service, in the catalogue. Say if you're looking for our geocon coverage, you come in, you can turn it on, you can see where it is on the map. You can identify and look at, find more information if you just don't, again, if you want to go download, you can download the whole package, the statewide package through here. We have sort of the KNZs, Esri and shapefiles available. If you want this data in sort of a CSV file, it is possible through SARIG, depending on how big the data set is. So again, if I wanted to, identify, I can select and identify and have a look at what type of data I will get on that drop down. So here you can see you'll get the age, dating methods, and etc. But if I'm like, okay, I want to take all of that out, but I don't have a GIS package, sort of Esri or MapInfo, I just want it in CSV, it is possible. So you just come out to statewide. You come over and you do a spatial search, and here you're going to actually select active layers. Once you select that, you draw the area, and then you just draw a box over the whole state, and down below you'll have a look and it will pull out the data sets. So here, it's 35 results, you can actually download all of that to CSV. So that's another way you can access data sets, spatial data sets. You can cookie cut out basically. With the spatial search, you can also start to tap into all of the other data sources available through SARIG. So our mines and deposits, our mineral drill holes, petroleum wells, completion reports, etc. So really this is a way to tap into individual databases. Again, this all has been kind of pre-packaged for you on that Unearth, the SARIG data package download, but this is sort of how other people would come into SARIG and access that data. I'm just trying to think, so web services, definitely. Oh, I suppose coming back to that catalogue, we do have, so here is the whole product catalogue in SARIG, so you can actually come in and have a look at all of our data. So this includes our spatial data sets. It also includes any data packages that we have available, any maps that we have, products as well. Generally, most of these are statewide available. So here, you know, if you were looking for anything on copper, sorry, just go back. You can do a search. I'll just accept that, get that out. And here, anything that's been tagged with copper will come up, you know, in that product catalogue. So you can, you know, download 3D models and things like that. Here, you can download 3D models, data packages, etc. As so Holly said before, we do have, we have tagged the challenge that we thought that were data sets of interest, but the whole product catalogue is available to have a look at and search and find information. Not sure what else kind of to go through this morning, because there is a lot there. I think one other thing probably to maybe note in the data, we do have, actually I don't know if I did put it on here. We did put, I'll just jump back onto in here. Shall we go through the envelope one? Because that's just to go through what we did there. I did put a tag in here for some other, let's go look for it. What we did package up on Unearthed as well. So here you can see these are all the individual surveys. I'm just going to find it. I can't find it. Here we go. So this is what is basically available on Earth, the Unearth website, but we have got it here as a link as well. One thing we did add in here, which, oh, I don't think I've added in. We'll jump across to the website, Holly. Mm-hmm. I just thought it'd be worth to have a look at the envelopes and just maybe explain what they are or not, do you think?
Oh yeah, good idea.
Oh, I'm not logged in. Are you going to log in?
Mine doesn't.
I can share it on mine if, or if you can log in, you can use your phone.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything else, or is there any questions that popped up on SARIG, or I mean, really, SARIG it's looking at the layers. You can identify and find information if you think it's of interest, and then basically it's just finding out how you download. So you can download to CSV, you can download the spatial data sets, or you can move across and use the web service as well. So the catalogue, in a sense, if you've got some data scientists out here, this is a catalogue service for the web. So this can, I know there's a bit of information on the Unearth website that you can actually script through, and you can script through all the linkages to different packages as well through that site. Do you think you want to just, anything else we need to cover?
Nothing springs to mind to me immediately. I think that's pretty good overview of SARIG.
Awesome, thanks, Christie. I think it might be worth, I think there are a couple of questions on specific data sets, and I don't know actually if it's worth, Peter, just touching base on what's happening with the reports as well. I did put an update on the website, but it might be worth to speak to that a little bit as well, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay, sorry, yeah, I'll just jump back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so Peter, would you mind giving a bit of an update on the work you guys are doing with the reports?
Okay, so the reports area is basically giving you access to all of what we call our envelopes. Now, our envelopes are basically a compilation of all of the reports that the mining companies submit, or the exploration companies submit every year for their exploration work on a tenement. So it includes, those documents include their geological descriptions of what's on the tenement, summaries of the work that they did. Sometimes the data itself can be within the reports, and, you know, just sort of written into the document itself. And sometimes in later years, more commonly, it's attached as a separate data file within that report. So all of those envelopes or reports are in PDF format currently. What we're doing at the moment is we are running Amazon's TextStract tool over all of those PDFs to produce an OCR output of each of those documents. That is actually proving to take a lot longer than we anticipated when we started. So the process is still running. We expect it to be done and the additional work that we need to do at the end of that to be complete, I think, early next week, I think is what we're saying. And once that's done, within that same AWS bucket that has all the PDFs, you will have a CSV version of the document as well as a JSON version of the document. We are just doing the basic TextStract process, so they will have lots of issues with them, and, you know, bits and pieces of text and handwritten things that just won't come through correctly. But quite a bit of the information that's in those documents should then be a bit more accessible to you via machine processes. Particularly the JSON documents, as I understand it, they actually give you the position on the page of all of the text. So in theory, you may be able to recreate tables and that sort of thing if there's data in those documents that we don't currently have in our database. I might just mention also the further work we're doing on extracting data out of those, Holly, with the uni students. Is that?
Yeah, definitely, that's great.
So there is a backlog of data that sits within those documents that is not in our database. So we are in the process at the moment of engaging a reasonable number of uni students from the unis in Adelaide to actually work through those envelopes that are within the area that the competition is particularly focused on. So we're not doing it for the whole state, we're just doing it for that, for the Gawler Craton aerial survey area, which is the sort of the bounding box of the area that we're asking you to focus on. And so they will be focused on getting some of that legacy data out of those documents and into our database, and that will feed through to you. Excuse me. That will feed through to you in the SARIG data package, which we will update periodically through the course of the competition. I'd currently say we might look at doing that twice. We'll let you know when that happens so that you've got the access to that new data. We won't be creating new files or new file types or adding additional fields. So the structure of what is in the SARIG data package should be consistent right throughout the competition. We'll just be adding more data in so that there'll be a bit more data sort of later on in the process for you. That legacy data capture will run for up to 3 months. So we should be complete with that by, what are we now, middle of March, by mid-June, I think. Mid to late June, anyway.
Excellent. I think that's, yeah, it's really great to have that additional data set for sure. So we had another question come through around the GCAS specifically, and I wonder if there might be some kind of background information from that might be helpful in terms of how the surveys are provided as a product and what information like is and isn't provided by the survey company. But essentially the questions are around what are the different types of data within the GCAS, like what are we providing, the different types of images and raw data. And I think someone had a question around proprietary file types that were only accessible in Hexagon software. I'm not sure if that's something you guys are aware of or not.
Okay, so I believe the GCAS data, there's the imagery sort of version of it is in ERS and Geotiff.
Yep.
And then the raw data should be in there in an ASCII format.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, I've never heard of Hexagon, so I'm not sure what format is in there that's proprietary to Hexagon, but we can certainly inquire about that, but I'm not aware of any sort of issues along those lines. I think the only one that might have some restrictions on it could be the ERS format, but all of the data that's in that should be in the ASCII files as well.
Yeah. So would ASCII files be readable, or is that what's the issue? Because I know with all of the when you were demoing from Surrey, so the first one, obviously you've got those images, the Geotiff and the ERS, and the next one, if you go to related links and you go to the data packages, which I'm pretty sure is what was all packaged up, I'm not sure what was packaged up in that, they all should be the ASCII files. Yeah, and maybe the products from the CSIRO might be a bit more, that you might need a geophysics software to open, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be something in there that only will open if you have geophysics software to specialise, like Intrepid or something like that.
Yeah.
Which may be what they're talking about.
I think the enhanced package was still the same ERS and Geotiff format, but if anybody strikes anything that they're having trouble with, by all means let us know.
Yeah. Did Laz send through some information on where some other like websites to have a look at that might be of help? I thought.
Yes, so if for anyone that does want to kind of have a look more, particularly in the raw data, we've got some links up on the website associated with that GCAS package, which does describe how to kind of extract some of that XYZ data from, I think it's from the ERS files.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, for anyone that wants to go and have a look on that should be extractable. Most things will open in QGIS, so QGIS, as Christy said before, that's a great open source package, which, you know, the majority, in fact, I think nearly all of the kind of spatial data associated with this project should open in there. So that's definitely what we'd recommend people get started with if you don't have access to any software currently. Is there anything else that you guys would add to that on a software side?
The one that I'm thinking of at the moment that I know the data isn't or does require some specific software to access is the seismic data, which is all in those SegWire files. But we did give you some links on, I think, how to transform that into an ASCII format via some software that the United States Geological Survey has made available. So, but that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head that shouldn't be accessible. Okay,
great. So yeah, anyone just let us know if you have any problems. It sounds like you should be able to kind of access the data for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I think even using some of the statewide data sets and say sort of, I know the rock sample sort of web service you could bring into QGIS, and it will show you, it's an indicator, the indicators of what data is available. So that it's broken up and it has like geochem, metrology, all the different types of biostrat, all the different types of ways to sample. It'll show you where in the state that this data is available, and then it's just like that linking back to that data package with all the interval data. So I think it could be a good pass to see, well, what data is where on those spatial data sets. And similar to the, I think the drill hole one, we say yes if there's got lithology, if it has stratigraphy, or if it is sitting at the core library example. Those statewide sort of data sets do help you locate information. Especially also with the mines and occurrences, we do have statewide data sets there that break it up into different commodities. So, if there is copper, if there's, it could, at the moment, that deposit, it could be, a drill hole to a mine, but it does indicate somewhere on the ground there has been something of copper or something of zinc, or so you can use those for a bit of a first pass to find, and then take the next step and dig a bit deeper. If that helps.
Yeah. Okay, so just go back onto some of the other questions that have come through. So we have had some questions around, and I'll ask you guys, but then I'll put my geologist hat on as well to help out some of these around what do we kind of mean by potential mineralization. So if we're thinking about copper, what do we mean when we say economic copper, and how do we describe that? So is there a parts per billion, is there a certain depth, is there a certain size, a combination of elements and minerals versus standalone deposits? I don't know if you want to comment on anything that's in the data, or then I can do my geology answer.
Well, you do your geology answer and we'll see where we can go from there.
Okay. So I think those are really, really valid questions, and actually are not always super easy to answer. So I think one of the ways to kind of look at this problem is to almost look for patterns of an anomalous data. So there's no hard and fast rule to say what is economic for certain commodities, although there are guidelines. So I think we can probably share some documents there, but it's not to say you need to find 1% copper for something to be economic, and what size that has to be, or 10% copper, or there's no hard and fast rule. But generally we're looking for high concentrations of these metals, and as well pointed out with some of those questions on the forum, the economics will then come down to many things as exploration companies go into developing some of these deposits. So where they are in terms of the infrastructure required, and how deep they are, how large those ore bodies end up being. But at this stage, we're really looking in this challenge for that early stage identification of areas to hold potential mineralization. So I think what the way you can approach it is by having a look in the database of those mineral occurrences and deposits and existing mines to understand what size and what grades they have for different commodities, and help to then apply that to look for similar signatures around in the Gawler region. One thing that I would encourage though is that obviously we've put mineral occurrences for the Gawler up, but we know that there's things that we think will be found in the Gawler that haven't been found before. So another interesting data set which is available under on our website as well is the Australia-wide Geoscience Australia data set for mineral occurrences and deposits, which will give you a broader idea of different types across the whole country, which should help you again kind of identify what are these kind of signatures for different mineralization styles. So when we ran a similar challenge last year for Oz Minerals, we had an open kind of data science structured competition which was run on that Geoscience Australia data. So if you go, we've reopened that, and that's a good way to kind of get started because the data's packaged all quite nicely and easily accessible for you from Geoscience Australia for magnetics, gravity, bunch of acid data, and drilling as well as the mineral occurrences. So if you wanted to kind of use Australia-wide data to help you get started at understanding what else could be out there, as well as the occurrences within the Gawler, that would be a good place to start. But yes, being as there is no hard and fast rule, I would use the existing deposits as a guideline for what to look at, and that goes for all those different elements. So we've mentioned kind of iron oxide, copper, gold deposits being something that people are exploring for in the Gawler, and of course the economics of those will be different to lithium, for example. There is a great web page on the government site, which I've linked to, which actually goes through all the potential mineralization styles that the geologists think could be found there. So that is also a great place to start to have a look at. What else? Answering that, and likewise, yes, I think for kind of industrial minerals or things which are more bulk tonnage, then there's other kind of economics that come into to play there, and there's all kind of potential types of deposits that could be found across the Gawler. Did you guys want to comment, Christie and Peter, at all on some of the definitions in the files around the occurrences of major and minor and what?
Well, I think just to add on to that, Holly, I suppose it is around, as you said before, it's a really hard question. But for South Australia, I think one of our biggest challenges is our cover and how deep it is. So that's why, again, you talked about, we look for patterns in the data for a deposit. They definitely do have them. So what we're trying to do as a government is help with putting out new data to look under the cover. It is a big challenge for us because drilling is expensive if it's very deep. So it's the new data. So basically the GCAS for us is quite new. I mean, the last data set only came out last week. So I think we're very interested to see what that opens up, what opportunities it is there to see new patterns. Again, the high logger data is quite new. I know it has been around for a while, but for the first time not so long ago, we've got a strike across the Olympic Dam of drill holes, and we put it through a new system through the high logger and retrieved new information. So it's how these new data sets can add value onto looking for these sort of alteration patterns for a mineral occurrence, and I mean that's something that is of interest, I think. Again, with the mines and occurrence, there is it is a good place to start, to see what is there, how deep are these deposits, and what is the patterns surrounding some of our majors. And then again, the miners coming up there with the developing, the miners still will have a resource. They will have, put forward some documentation you will find definitely in our databases around.
Yeah, I think I'm just putting my computer on just in case I want to refer to the actual database itself and look at some of that data, but I just, I guess the major and minor kind of category, I think, is more around, or some of that information is more around the economic significance of the deposit or the occurrence. Yeah, I don't know that I would spend an enormous amount of time processing data from the perspective of whether it's major or minor, or because I think the key is that there's something there, and there's an element to which, I mean, yes, if you've developed a mine, you know what you're digging out of the ground, you do understand the economies of the mine, but in terms of an occurrence, where you're perhaps just recognising that we hit something in a drill hole or somebody found something interesting on the surface, the economics of that are still largely unknown and perhaps quite subjective. I mean, that it may be a very insignificant occurrence that means nothing, but it might also be that if you drilled your drill hole 500 metres to the west of it, there's a significant or a more significant occurrence or a deposit there. So, yeah.
And I'm still reflecting again like on the age of the data. So, you know, we have probably, 130 years of data available, and some of it can be quite historic. So, you know, for example, they may not have assayed for the whole suite, 50 years ago. They might have only assayed for a couple. So, things can get missed, I suppose. And now, the technology is getting better. We're not probably missing so much now, but it's that history of, that we're very interested in to see what patterns could emerge with new technology available in the data science area.
And that is an interesting thing that I might just mention quickly, that we did run an exercise with one of the universities over here where a group of students did a comparison of our geochemistry data for what we called the department ran a few years ago, a drilling program of about 14 drill holes actually in the Gawler Craton area. And we used that data as saying the geochemistry from this is, we consider this high quality because we've got the complete picture of the processing that was done and the analysis that was done and the quality control processes. And then we compared it to geochemistry, the rest of the geochemistry within about 100k radius of that area, and said, can we see a statistically significant difference between the two data sets? And the project sort of only really got part way, but because in the end, it was somewhat too big for the students to be able to do over the course of the year that they had to do it. But what we did very quickly find was that one of the problems with doing that is exactly what Christie talked about, that the companies will often go out and they might only assay for 5 or 6 things. And so we weren't actually that easily able to compare like with like. And I guess I just mentioned that because it's something to think about, because historically companies, and even today to some extent, because they're driven by economics, they won't always assay as comprehensively as everyone might like, that would actually lead us to find, something significant, because they will often just assay for the elements that are of interest for the particular things that they're looking for. So that was just a little interesting discovery that we made in our own data over the course of the last 12 months. And it's probably just worth keeping some of that sort of thing in mind in thinking about the data.
And I also think it's worth just mentioning, deposits are global, and we do have similarities with other places over, our geology in other countries. So I know, there's, the patterns and things that you may look for, they may already be kind of, they've definitely been documented and reported, and I would definitely be looking through some of those report books that we have available that our geologists have written and compared, with different areas globally. That's a really kind of good data or background information to kind of look at what our own geologists have written on the Gawler Craton, the background of the Gawler Craton, and there's definitely similarities, as I said, elsewhere around the globe.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Christie, there's lots of other data sets that could be used to help out on this as well. I think as well, it's worth mentioning that what we're trying to achieve here is really to try and kind of identify areas of interest for explorers to follow up on. So a lot, we expect that a lot of the results of this will be, hey, the examples of, there's a potential for this area to host something of interest. And because we know that exploration is relatively difficult, the probability of that could still be quite low, but it's something to start with, and it's something to help people kind of focus their exploration efforts. So I suppose from that data-driven perspective, we certainly don't expect everyone to submit the right answer, because it's not really about that. It's about identifying this area is interesting due to these combination of features, and we think that it has the potential to host this type of mineralization, and so that's an area for someone to follow up with.
And I think it's like looking at different exploration tools and techniques. Like, we know you can drill, we know you can take a rock sample and things like that, but I suppose what is out there now that can help us with with those exploration tools and techniques from a data point of view, I suppose, is that's a focus too.
And I guess for those outside of geology, I often use the analogy, the kind of simple needle in a haystack analogy, but we just don't really know what the needle's made of. So you're really kind of looking for what's the signature of something that's different from everything else. And that's what's kind of interesting. So that focus on anomalism rather than what's different, or what's anomalous, rather than search for something specific that looks like something specifically like another thing, is a useful way to look at it.
Yeah, and I think the government, we're unique because we get data from all across the state, which what makes this really interesting, I think, as a competition. So it's we're not just focused in one area. So we're all of our data is across the state. So there is and there is so much data coming in, it is challenging to find, what that needle is or what pattern. And I think that's what I think is really interesting about this competition.
So kind of on that, we've had sorry, go ahead, Peter.
Oh, sorry, I was just I knew opening the database would actually help address. There was a reference in the early part when you first raised that question to the significance and the mention of major and minor. And this just has refreshed my memory that particular reference is related to the commodity, and it's the relationship of the commodity to the deposit as a whole. So it doesn't necessarily mean if something is classified as minor that it's not still economic, or that it's not still significant in terms of economic. It's really it's the economic significance of that commodity to that mineral deposit.
Okay, that's good clarification. Okay, sorry, just looking at questions here. Okay, so one question comes through: are we limited to a purely data-driven method, or can we include our own geological models developed from the data available? No, absolutely. I think there's competition. It's about bringing geology and data science together. Definitely not looking for purely data-driven methods or purely geological methods. This is more about looking at the data in new ways, whatever those new ways may be, or different ways to what people have done before. And we encourage people to kind of team up if you're looking for some different expertise that you might not have in your group. So we have some stuff on the website if you're interested in getting new people into your team. But absolutely, we encourage you to use different methods. The data is all publicly available, but I encourage you to use other data sets that you have access to as well, as long as you have the right to use them. If you have already developed models elsewhere that you use, you're obviously welcome to use those as well if they've been trained on other data sets, so or other areas. So completely open as to how you want to approach that, and we certainly encourage a lot of different approaches. From another question here: any guidelines of rate of success for finding commercial viable baseline data sets? So good question. I don't know if you guys have any information on that. I mean, generally industry-wide exploration success is low in terms of finding a really high grade deposit, and by low I mean like well under 1%. So that's due to the nature and complexity of geology itself. But yeah, overall our global success rate in finding major deposits is well under 1%. success rate.
I think even they say, you know, it takes many exploration companies to go over the same ground as well. You know, it's not, it takes time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't say that 1% that stat should scare everybody away, because it's a really interesting problem, but we definitely think that there is way more to be found in the data by looking at it in a different way. And there's lots of great stories recently to demonstrate that. You know, BHP just last year drilled Oak Down West and had an intersection of, oh, I think it was 400 meters at 3% copper or something, which is just phenomenal. And that's something which has been known about as a target, but had not been discovered. So that was just last year when a really amazing deposit was discovered. So there's definitely more in the data, we think, that can be used to identify targets like that and can lead to new discoveries. So it is difficult, which is why we're putting up as a challenge. But we really believe there's plenty in the data sets that can showcase ways or areas to look for find these new deposits. Arun, just another question from you there. Do we provide any computing power such as AWS? We don't, but if you do come into any issues with that and you feel like you need some assistance of AWS credits, reach out. We'll see if there's anything we can do. We don't provide it as standard. Last time we ran a similar competition, we found that majority of people didn't spend too much, but do reach out to me if you're getting to a point where you feel like you need some help there. What other questions do we have? Did you guys get any other questions come through to you? Peter and Christie?
No, I haven't had any through. No, I think just a couple of where we find information. Generally, I'm pointing to the Unearth website first, because that's where we have pre-packaged a lot of this information, which just makes it easier, not having to go through, so we can pick things individually. And yeah, generally just pointing there first, but acknowledging, you know, through this webinar that there is other data sets available that could be of an interest.
Great. So it's got a few questions coming through here. So from Jack, is the study area just contained to the GCAS area? So I guess yes, in the sense that the GCAS is kind of done over the whole of the Gawler, and the Gawler crown is really the project area. So we have provided that file online of what that outline is. I mean, I personally don't have any issues with people looking outside of that area of interest if there are things that you're coming up with. I think we really constrain that just as a guideline. We didn't want to, I guess, ask too much of people in terms of looking at the entire state. I don't know, Peter and Christie, if you have a comment on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we constrained it to the Gawler Craton because of the aerial survey and the rich geophysical data sets that provided. But yeah, I mean, many of the other data sets, probably most of them, we're including the complete statewide data within it. So yeah, I mean, if you want to go beyond those boundaries, there's certainly no restrictions on doing that, apart from, you know, the data that's provided and the limitations on area for some of those data sets.
So I believe the drilling packages are all
statewide.
Yeah.
It's drilling, the mineral occurrences. I think the only other one that off the top of my head that's probably limited, the seismic, we limited to, it goes beyond the boundaries, but it's not statewide, but it's any survey that intersects the region. And the other one is, there may be an MT, a magnetotellurics data set that becomes available later in the competition if the processing gets finished for that is just within that region, I think. Yeah.
And kind of along the similar lines, I had a question can we focus on a small area to demonstrate a concept or approach? Absolutely. We actually have a couple of, I guess, prizes out there as well that's kind of encouraging people to do that. So particularly in underexplored areas, we're encouraging people to look at the northern and western Gawler to see, can you come up with some new interesting concepts or models there. We fully expect that it's reasonable for some approaches to be applied to a much smaller area. So definitely that's why we're fairly open in the submissions in terms of what you can submit. So people may want to submit a prospectivity map of the whole region, or people may want to submit some more smaller areas of interest. So either of those approaches is totally fine. And then the assessment is then on that technical approach. So yeah, either is okay. Another question here: are we trying to create a geological model or deposit, or are we trying to sell a deposit that we think could be profitable? Good question to frame it in that way. I think really what we're trying to achieve here is, I suppose, generate areas of interest or targets. So whether that's a geological model of a deposit which indicates areas of interest, or data-driven targets that are generated, or probability of things occurring, the ultimate aim is to kind of come up with an area that's interesting and put something behind that to weight that in a data-driven or non-data-driven approach. So why is this area interesting, and why do you think someone might follow up with it? So in a way, I suppose, yes, trying to sell something that's of interest, but it's more around how do you provide the rationale behind the targets that you have produced to convince someone that they're interesting and that they're technically that the approach you've used is technically valid. So that's why in the submission we've kind of got those two parts of the actual files of the targets themselves, which could be points or polygons or grids, and then the technical report, which is there for you to kind of explain the rationale of those targets and how they came about. So hopefully that kind of answers that question.
I think again it's back to those new exploration tools. Yeah.
Another question: can we use shape files as a way of restricting the data extract from an area of interest? I mean, as far as I know, well, I don't know. Can you use that, Christie, in terms of actually extracting the data?
So there's two. So really, we have obviously the shape file of the Gawler Craton Airborne Survey area that's available on the Unearth website. I think one that may be of interest is we do have, when you look at the industry reports, because there is quite a lot of them, and it will be a bit of a way, to filter things out. We have a historic minerals tenement layer. So that has all of the historic, I suppose, polygons of where the companies used to have their tenement coverage. You will be able to link from, they will have a tenement number, and you will be able to link, that tenement number will be in the report. So there is a way you could probably extract to find, if you are looking in an area, if you want to say, look, I want all the reports from this area, I would be looking at using the historic mineral tenement layer for that. Obviously, we've got ones for current exploration tenements, but remembering that we can't publish anything until it's been 5 years. We've held in confidentiality. So again, you can use, there is reporting basically, probably not in the envelope package that we packaged up, but there is a larger, publications database that is available, and we do definitely have some information around the mines and all of that as well available in publication. So those, it's those probably tenement boundaries, I think, could be of interest to access information from the reports. Would locate them. Where are they? Because you're going to have a PDF, you're not going to know where. But the tenement shape files will help you on that.
And pretty much everything else, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that's not either has spatial coordinates within the data or as a part of the data itself, or can be related. So thinking specifically of the seismic, the SegY data, that can be related to survey lines, which are also packaged up with it.
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective, you should be able to use the shapefile of the GCAS boundary as a way to extract data that's of particular interest.
Yeah, you can also use shapefiles as well, because on SARIC we've got available probably like the no-go zones. We have places where you can't explore or produce in South Australia, so it could be of an interest of not what's of interest, but where there is no point, we can't find a target anyway. So they're all available as well on SARIC. They could be of interest to block out areas, so you don't not looking in those areas. Not sure.
Okay, great. Can the tenement number be used as an area restriction?
I'm not sure what I mean by area restriction. I wouldn't say an area restriction, no.
I think more to like crop, just to can you use it, I guess, to then just when you're extracting the data, just to get the data from the project area?
So yes. So the tenement number should flow through to the publications and reports database. So there's envelopes, and it should flow through to the drilling and sampling data as well. And the drilling, definitely the collar file has the tenement number in it. So yes, it will flow through to a lot of data.
Thanks. Okay, well, we did have this session open for another half an hour, but kind of slowing down on some of the questions that come through. What I'll do is to give everyone on the call a few more minutes if you want to pop any questions into the Q&A or the chat box. I'll just talk through, I suppose, a few of the other areas of the challenge aside from the data that might be of interest. So just running through some of those things we haven't discussed in detail, the different prize categories and the submission guidelines. So you'll notice in the prize categories that we have kind of the main overall prizes, which are kind of for the best kind of combined approach here, as well as our best kind of overall student submission. And then we have a lot of secondary prizes, which are really designed if you wanted to target something specifically or take on a smaller piece of the project. So I wanted to run through a couple of those. One of the interesting ones is the data prep prize specifically, which is actually only open for the first 2 months of the competition. And the reason we've got that up is to actually help with some of the questions that are coming here. So, how can we look at that data and say what's anomalous and what's not? So we might find that someone produces a data set which extracts a certain area around mineral known deposits, which people can then use to train on. So by incentivizing you guys to kind of share some of the things that you're doing to get that data ready to look at, we're hoping that we can kind of help everybody move forward fairly quickly in that space. So if you have something interesting that you're doing with data, and thanks for those that have already started sharing, please pop that up. If there is something that you're looking for someone to do that you might need, please also pop that up on the forum, and that could give people the idea that they might need in terms of what to do with that data. So that prize, there's actually 4 of those available for the first couple of months of the challenge. And then we've also got tailored prizes around looking at data in specific ways. So one thing I mentioned was this looking at underexplored areas. So how do we help people find new interesting areas in areas such as the northern and western Gawler? We think there's lots of potential there, but they don't have as much exploration activity historically because typically people will tend to focus on areas which already have known deposits. So you'll see a lot of activity around Olympic Dam and Prominent Hill, Carapatina, around those existing mines. One of the things that we also have a prize for is around what is the key pieces of knowledge that will improve our processes. So we're talking here a lot about different data types that we can use, but one thing that's really helpful for us for explorers to know is, well, actually, if I had this additional piece of data set, I'd be able to have a higher confidence in looking for this commodity here, or these are the additional pieces of information that would help me know what to do next. So we've got a prize around that, around what key pieces of information can we additionally collect. And then we've got a couple of others around specifically undercover. So I mentioned before, a significant area of the project is undercover. So what are the best techniques to use to look for deposits undercover? And another one around using our kind of chemistry and mineralogy data. So how can that best be used to target? So we're hoping that these are ways that people, if you have specific areas of expertise or knowledge, that you can focus in on some of these secondary prizes as well. And then, sorry, another question around can we restrict data based on year?
Yeah, so where there is a date associated with the data, that date should be included with the data. There will be some where we just don't know, or, you know, and some where it's, you know, it should be, you know, most things should be reasonably relatable or reliable down to sort of the year kind of level. So yes, I think you should be able to for most of the data.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there'll be a drill date, a sample date, mostly. I think, again, you can really, if you can get that relationship to the tenement. So a tenement might be, you know, a company might have taken out for 3 to 5 years, and at that annual reporting will always have a date when that was reported back to the government. So there is definitely a relationship there on their reporting to government when they have that tenure.
The only thing I would say would be to be cautious, or to just make sure you have a look at the sampling date or the analysis date, because some drill core can sit in our core library and be sampled many years after it was drilled. So just keep that in mind if you're particularly interested in date, that the date of the sampling or the analysis was actually done is the one to keep a close eye on.
So I've got a question here. Do you have a file available with mine outputs over time for different commodities that allow us to set targeting of prospects of interest, i.e. kind of something to train an algorithm on? I guess the simple answer to that is no. Production data isn't something that is provided publicly. However, I think that, and Peter, Christie, correct me if I'm wrong, we would have information in the file of the size of the resource if it has been defined. Is that in those?
So I know what we do have available is on the SARI dashboard. We've got 2 dashboards. One is an overall industry dashboard, which shows what our production, etc., but that's across the state. We do have the commodities dashboard, so that highlights our major commodities like copper, gold, uranium, etc., and that will give you, you can download as a CSV, will give you our production, our resource reserve figures across the state for that commodity, and then you can further drill into a major project or a developing project. So on those dashboards, they're separated by basically of where they're at in their process. So so a developing project might be at a feasibility stage, it might be at JORC resource, and then the major, it means all of that, you know, and the mining lease has been approved and everything, all those approvals have gone past and it's moved into, you know, that's the separation there on those 2 data sets if you hit our dashboard. So for the dashboard, you go to SARI on the main menu, the blue toolbar, up the top on the main menu, the second one is commodity dashboards. That will give you some resource reserve figures for individual mines and developing not developing projects if there's nothing there yet. And some production figures as well.
Thanks.
If that helps, yeah.
And I think some of the ways that people have approached this previously is to almost take, again, because we're kind of, while we are looking for significant deposits, also looking, you know, for areas of interest, the way people have approached this previously has been to kind of look at the locations of the current mines or historical mines, and just almost crop, you know, an area around them, or say, you know, what within like a 10 by 10 kilometer grid or something, and say, well, let's say that anything within this 10 by 10 grid could be indicative of some of this deposit, and so that kind of almost like extracting a radius around a mine of the all the relevant data sets that then you can use to train. But I think there should be some more comments on there in the forum as well, because I think that's an important question. If anyone has an idea or a way of prepping that data set to kind of enable people to train based on known deposits with the right data, I think that'd be a really great data set to share. So just another question coming up here: what forms a good team to work on the project? Geologists, geochemists, data scientists, seismic analysts. Look, I think generally we think a combination of domain expertise, be that geology or geochemistry, along with a data science or mathematical or statistical background is helpful. So people that are used to looking at large data sets and analyzing large data sets. And really, because geology is complex, having that insight from a domain expert, someone that is familiar with geology or even the area itself, it's really useful to help validate some of the outputs of that work. So last time we ran this, we really found that the teams that had a combination of skill sets were really successful, because they're kind of bringing those different angles to the problem. So definitely I would suggest teaming up with a geologist and someone with that kind of more either data science or mathematical background to approach this one. How student friendly is this competition historically? Well, we haven't run this one before. I think we do have a specific student prize, and we've done that because we understand that students might not be able to spend as much time, might not have as much of the industry expertise, but certainly we're seeing a number of student teams crop up from different universities. Whilst to win the student prize, you need to be a student. We know that people's professors are also kind of helping them out with these things. So yes, I think the competition definitely is student friendly, and that's why we've got certain prizes that should suit the students. But likewise, we would suggest that students, whether you're in geoscience or another discipline, if you can form a team across departments, then that would be a really interesting approach as well. I think the other thing that makes the competition really student friendly is it's not just about winning the cash prizes, although that is nice. This is a great way to work on a real industry problem with real data and get feedback. So everyone that submits will get feedback from a really impressive judging panel on your work. And I guess the nice thing about being a student is that you can do this and get feedback, and it's not necessarily graded, although it can count as credits if you're interested in doing that. We have been speaking to some professors about bringing this in as a coursework project. And it's great to go on your CV when you start looking for jobs, and a great opportunity to kind of work on some of those soft skills and team building skills as well. So we definitely think it's really student friendly, and we are happy to help out with any student teams, run some webinars specifically for your university and to answer any specific questions as well. So just reach out to me if you have any more questions on that, but we're certainly keen to have a lot of student teams involved.
Yeah, I think from the government side, yes, definitely student friendly. We are here to support students, and I think yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So I will leave a few more minutes for any last final questions to come through. Peter and Christie, is there any key things that you wanted to say before we finish up?
I don't know. I'd like to say we're just excited, to see what people are going to be looking at in our data. I think we're also very interested in how people are going to use our data in new ways, I suppose. And as you said before, what gaps do we have? How can we help as a government to put, even if it's looking for formats or different data sets, another way that we can, help out in our industry. I think we're very excited on what sort of those, what comes out of it as well. Yeah.
I think there's as Christie was saying, you know, very excited about the competition, and I think one of the things about this is, there is a growing recognition within the geological community and the mineral exploration community of the growing capabilities and the need into the future to really incorporate data science as a part of geology and as a part of mineral exploration, because it's an immensely untapped resource. And I think for me, that's one of the real key exciting things about a competition like this. And we were talking before about how student friendly is the competition. Hey, to be getting a bunch of students who are interested in pushing the boundaries of geological science and data science together to see what information, what knowledge can be unlocked using those kinds of techniques, it really is a significant part of the future of the industry. And I think in that regard, students should be, you know, pretty excited and keen to be participating in this, because I think it's only going to stand them in good stead into the future. And from my perspective also, there's a bit of excitement about just the fact that traditionally, you know, we've had this immense data resource available for people, and it's always been there, but we're constantly working to try and grow it and improve how we deliver it. So there's a huge learning curve for us about how people want to use the data and how they do make use of it. But also I think there's a learning curve for everybody else to be able to say, hey, look at this resource that we've got and how can we use it? And this competition is, you know, sort of breaking new ground really for geologists. Traditionally use our data sets in the same way. They all come in, they pretty much do the same kinds of things. They look at the same kinds of numbers, they go away, they make the same decisions, and they have a 1% success rate, as Holly was saying before. Maybe we can make that a whole heap better by actually understanding and integrating the data that we have and making it available to people in ways that are increasingly usable and useful. And so, you know, from my perspective as the person who manages that side of things, or much of that side of things for our agency, it's a pretty exciting competition to be involved in.
Awesome, thanks guys. I think those are really great comments, and yeah, I couldn't echo that more. I think it's super exciting. It's the way that the industry is changing, and it's great for anyone to be involved in this to be a part of that. And you know, I know a lot of people, probably some people on this call and some people taking part, you know, people that are really keen to get involved and see that change, and it's a great way to get involved. So thanks everyone. If you have any more questions, please pop them on the forum about anything at all, whether it's data, whether it's prizes, whether it's submissions. We will be providing regular updates, so we'll provide those via email and we'll post them on the forum as well. So when there's more data, when when we have some updates for you. So yeah, so please just contact us in that way. And if there is, we'll probably run another one of these in a little while, once people have had more time to work on the data and are getting a bit deeper into it, to ask us some more questions. So I think there haven't been any final questions come through, so I will sign off and say thank you very much to Peter and Christie for your time. We really appreciate it. I think that was really great insights into a lot of the data and how people can use it, and it's been really, really helpful to get people started on some of those data sets. So thanks everyone. And yes, I will share this recording with everyone shortly. So
Thanks, Holly.
Thanks, Holly.
Bye.
Yeah.
See you.